Now, you had to abbreviate your presentation at the end, kind of abbreviate the beginning now to recap, and then take your time on the other panels of this. You're going to have a bigger model and a lot more there at the event. We're going to really detail this. So, Mr. Avery, please continue.
Okay. To start out, I'm glad you mentioned that. We will have a model of the entire World Trade Center that's at 1 inch equals 30 feet. So it's about 4 foot by 4 foot and about 5.5 feet tall. So it's something to look at, and you can come up and take photographs of it if you'd like at some point during the event. But to summarize, I guess in the beginning, first of all, I will not present anything on Building 7. We'll have another gentleman that talks about Building 7 and the NIST report. I will concentrate only on the Twin Towers. So what I've discovered by studying the Twin Towers and the structure is that it was a very powerful building and quite able to handle the impact of a 767. And the reason why that is because every portion of this building, it was built in such a way that when they say pancaked, this building just does not lend itself to pancaking. Anything that happens to it is compartmentalized by the way it's structured.
If it could fall over, it would topple.
Correct. If it was going to, and in fact, it actually happened. Now, and that's this very first drawing here. And I've got to give some credit to Eric Huffschmidt. You probably know him. He did a 2-hour video way back when on painful questions, and he has a very nice book too that he did. And when I first saw this too, I was not aware of this happening. But what the toppling of the leaning over the top of the south tower creates a force moment. And the way you figure this out in structures is you divide the total height of the part that's rotating in rotation, and you divide it in two to come up with the center of its gravity, and then you multiply it by the weight of the whole structure that's in rotation. And we know that that's 290,000 kips, 290 million pounds, and you multiply it by 192 feet, the half of its height, and you get a force moment of 55,680,000 foot kips. Now, that is a very powerful event going on right here. It's like Pennzoil Tower falling off of an 80-story building. So what you need to stop this rotation is exactly the same thing on the other side. You have to push against the leaning side with 55,680,000 foot kips is what would be required.
And it would have stayed together basically in one big piece and fallen to the ground, but it didn't. It Absolutely. Broke off and then evaporated.
Absolutely. And this is why I have a big question mark here. How could this start and end up with this? Molten metal, tons of molten metal in the basement. And just
2,500 degrees, 6 weeks later, satellite aircraft photos, the government reports submitted, all this molten steel way above any temperature that jet fuel could cause.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And we've got the firefighters saying it was like inside a foundry, just molten metal spilling everywhere.
Correct. And we find out that the molten iron in the basements is not really, that's not from steel. I always thought that maybe that was the melted steel. It's not. It's actually the end of a thermite reaction.
Because it turns steel into molten iron.
Correct.
It was the byproduct of smelting. I guess the reverse smelting. Breaking steel that was produced with the coke down into, like, pig iron. Is that right?
When I talked to some other gentlemen at Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, they are telling me that it is not from just, there's iron makes up a part of steel, obviously. But that's not where that iron comes from. It comes from the thermite reaction itself.
And with the spectrometers, Jones and others, and separately people duplicated this, you get the samples. It has the exact byproducts, the leavings of the explosive thermite.
Correct. Correct. And, of course, we have discovered the unspent thermite in this stuff. Well, anyway, this next chart here shows what should have happened. I mean, this is exactly what should have happened. This top part should have fallen off in one chunk, 32 stories tall, with structural integrity inside of it right here. But this didn't happen. And the reason why it didn't happen, obviously, is it had been exploded from the top up and from the all the way up and down the building. Now, this is what we're asked to believe, and you don't need any fancy mathematics to prove this. Just the 5 inches of concrete floors multiplied by 110 is going to give you almost 4 foot high, 4-story high stack of concrete pancakes. Now, since it did have 6 stories under the ground right here, that would take care of that. But we're forgetting the steel. Steel like that just doesn't fold up into anything. There's steel in between each one of these floors. So you've got to at least permit at least 3 feet of gnarled, twisted steel in between each one of these concrete slabs. The result is you're going to end up with about a 27-story pile of pancake slabs and twisted steel.
But instead it was like a 1-story pile?
Oh, maybe 2 stories above the basement. So, of course, there was lots of debris in the basement level. So you're talking about, 8 stories, but you don't see any slabs. There's no slabs at all. The concrete is gone. And we know where it went. It went all over Manhattan. Southern Manhattan was covered with it.
And then the EPA lied and said that the mercury from all the equipment and the computers and the mercury-fired thermostats and the asbestos and the concrete was good for the firefighters. And the media, MSNBC, has called them conspiracy theorist scum, that they're even saying they're dying when all the universities and medical facilities, there's been literally hundreds of articles, they do CAT scans, and some of them have multiple ounces of the glass and stuff in their lungs. They're dying. They're not faking going in the ground.
I believe they've got nanothermite in their lungs. I don't know why they couldn't have been breathing all that stuff, too. It was in every dust sample taken, and that's what we found. So anyway, the next, this is showing the full height of the building. And the mechanical floors that were spaced in between.
This is how it's overbuilt to 2,000 times stress.
That's right. And then we have they also use trusses in these zones to connect the exterior to the core.
The size of a giant railroad trestle.
That's right. It keeps the building from leaning too much and from swaying.
In the wind.
Right. That's right. And so this is showing the core at the top that's supporting the 5-story hat truss. And of course, you know about train trestles, the kind of things they can carry, the kind of weight. You can park a train on them, and there was one over by the tap house that's about 250 feet long, and they park trains on them loaded with gravel and everything else. And this one's 5 stories and only spans 65 feet and 35 feet and could certainly support anything near the top for sure, merely by transferring the tension at the top onto the heavy steel core in the middle.
So the plane couldn't have sliced it off like it did.
Yeah. What I was worried about is if you cut all these columns on the outside, or a lot of them, would you have global collapse? Well, the fact is, no, you wouldn't. In fact, if you're this close to the top, you could probably cut every column all the way around, and the hat truss would transfer all of the tension in those columns over to the central core. And when on the North Tower, as we get over here, you see it's even.
But again, according to the media, the documented mega central core didn't exist.
That's right. They call it a hollow tube. And it's not even a tube in a tube. It's a building in a tube. It is a different, actually, there's 2 different types of structural systems combined into one.
And it turns out Building 7 was overbuilt as the emergency FEMA New York bunker.
Yes.
And it magically, of course, CIA was based in it.
Yeah, that's right. This shows the outer columns. They're 3'3", center to center. The glass in between them, from steel to steel, edge, it's only 2'1", and with the column with the glass mullions in there, the width of glass in there, what you could actually look out of was only 18 inches wide. And these things run top to bottom, and they are connected by both bolts and steel clips. And I want you to look at this too. This portion right here is the spandrel. It's 54 inches deep. That's 4'6", and it's 2 inches of steel, and it's welded to every column on the outer face. And that is what is actually carrying any kind of damage that gets done to this exterior wall. Anything above it, wherever these columns are severed, anything that's above it gets transferred over to the end columns on either side of it by these heavy steel spandrels that are 54 inches deep.